You. Yes, you. Do you want an A in AP Biology? I am assuming you do. I am giving you the key to success. But what could that possibly be? Morphemes, that's what. But they're morphemes. Turnigram gave us prefixes and suffixes, so we're going to use them. If you know all the AP Biology morphemes by heart, you can know what words mean before even looking them up. Did you make AP Biology morphemes flashcards? That is boring. Here's some quality educational video. I'll be going over all 7 tests and give or take 560 morphemes. If you watch these videos enough, you'll be ready for AP Biology by the end of summer. So let's get started with Quiz 1 morphemes. A or an. The prefixes a and an mean no, lacking, or none. For example, Lady Gaga is not a typical artist. Therefore, she is an atypical artist. And then there's anorexia, which is when someone purposefully does not ingest enough food, and therefore not being nourished. Ab means away from or out from. An example would be abortion, which means stopping the process of pregnancy, or abnormal, which means straying away from being normal. Ac means to or toward. An example would be the word accord. Ac meaning to or toward, ord meaning ordinance. So going towards ordinance is accord. Acious means of or pertaining to. An example would be gracious, which means of or pertaining to grace. And another example would be bodacious waves, man. Aku means hearing. For example, acoustics, acoustic instruments, or acoustic guitar. Acro or acro. Acro and acro mean extreme or peak. An example would be acrobat, an extreme profession. Ad is another morpheme meaning to or toward. A biological example would be adrenaline, ad meaning to or toward, and renal meaning kidney. This makes sense because the adrenal gland is where blood flows into the kidneys. Adeno. The morpheme adeno means gland. An example would be adenovirus, which is a virus that affects any gland. Agri means field or soil. An example would be agriculture, the culture of field or soil, like farming. Al means having character of. An example would be homicidal, the person who has the character to, or the drive to, commit homicide. Alb means white. An example would be albinism, which is a disorder when an organism does not produce enough pigments, therefore it looks all white. Algia means pain. A common example would be fibromyalgia, which is a medical condition where there's a lot of pain in connective muscle tissue. Alti means high. An example of this is altitude, which means how high up in the air you are. This is not to be confused with alto, which means low. A musical term alto means the lowest possible female voice. Amoebe means change or alteration. An example of this is amoeba, which is a species that is constantly changing. Amphibia means leading a double life. An example of this would be amphibians, which are organisms that live both on land and in water. Ampho, or amb. Ampho and amb mean both. An example of ampho would be amphoteric. An amphoteric substance is a substance that can react both as an acid or a base. An example of amp would be the word ambiguous. Ambiguous means open to more than one interpretation. Ana means up. An example of this is anabolic steroids. Anabolic steroids are used to up the testosterone, which is used for muscle gain. Andro means masculine or man. An example of this would be android, a science fiction term meaning a robot that looks like a man, like from iRobot with Will Smith. Anemo means wind. An example of this is anemone, another word for a windflower. A more well-known species is the close resembling sea anemone. Angio means vessel. An example is an angiogram, which is an X-ray test that uses a special dye and a camera to take pictures of blood flow in blood vessels. Ante means before or ahead of time. An example of this would be an antebellum, which is the time period that occurs before a war. And tero means from. An example is anterograde amnesia, which is when the victim loses capability to make new memories after the amnesia-inducing
Helga, can you hear me? Who's Helga?
Antho means flower. An example is anthology. An anthology is a collection of poems or songs. But in the old days, a poem was always delivered with a flower. A collection of poems meant a collection of flowers, therefore it was called an anthology, and the name stuck. Anti means against. An example would be anti-smoking, when someone is against smoking. Don't do it. Anthropo means human. An example would be anthropology, the study of humans and human culture. Ap means to or toward. An example is apes, animals that evolved toward humans. Aqua means water. An example is
Aquaman, swift and powerful monarch of the ocean, with ability to summon and command all creatures of the deep.
Archaeo. Archaeo means primitive or ancient. An example would be archaeology, the study of ancient human history. Arthro. Arthro means joint. An example would be arthritis, the painful inflammation or stiffness of joints. Aster or ast. Aster or ast means stars. An example is astronaut, a person who travels into space, or asterisk, that little punctuation star thingy. Ate. The suffix ate is used to form verbs from nouns. An example is germinate, when seeds sprout and form germs. Ation. Ation is a suffix used in forming nouns from verbs. An example is sensation, the state of sensing something. Atom. Atom means vapor. An example is an atomizer, which is a device that creates vapor out of various substances. Audi. Audi means hear, like audio. For example, the current song on the audio soundtrack for this video is Genius of Love by the Tom Tom Club. Auto. Auto means self. An example of this is automobile, the self-operated form of transportation. Bactra. Bactra means stick or club. An example is, though it sounds different, Bacillus bacteria, which is a stick-shaped bacteria. Barb. Barb means beard. An example is a barber, someone who trims beards, and sometimes necks. Barrow. Barrow means weight, like the heavy weight of a voice of a baritone singer. Bath. Bath means deep or weight. An example is a bathtub, a deep container in which you use to bathe. Bene. Bene means well or good. An example is benefit, which is an advantage, profit, or happiness gained for something. Bi. Bi means two, twice, or double. An example is a bicycle, which has two cycling wheels. Bio or bi. Bio and bi mean life or living. An example of this would be biology, the study of how things live. Blast. Blast means sprout or germ, which in biological terms means the young or immature form of something. For example, a neoblast is a large immature cell that will eventually become a lymphocyte. But I don't want to be a lymphocyte! Brachii. Brachii means having arms. An example is the Brachiosaurus, a dinosaur that had arm-like appendages. Branchi. Branchi means having fins. For example, the Branchiopoda is a funky-looking sea creature with lots of fins. Brev. Brev means short. For example, brevity, which means being brief or short. Bronch. Bronch means windpipe. For example, bronchi are what branches off of the trachea and into the lungs. Carb. Carb means with coal or carbon. For example, carbohydrates, which are mostly made out of carbon and hydrogen. Cardi. Cardi means heart. For example, a cardio workout is a workout specified to work the heart. Kai. Carn means meat. For example, carnivores are organisms that only eat meat. Carp. Carp means fruit. For example, carpology, the official study of fruits and seeds. Carpal. Carpal means wrist. For example, carpal bones are the bones inside your wrist. Obviously. Cod. Cod means tail. For example, the caudal fin on a fish is another word for the fish's tail fin. You have just gotten smarter and more successful in life. So thanks. Join us next time on AP Biology Morphemes. That's stupid. One step closer to passing AP Biology. So thanks for watching.